it's not easy to do this work. And
Mhm.
sometimes it requires confronting things that you're like, can it just stay in the past? I just
Mhm.
don't want to think about it anymore. But even in saying that, you're still thinking about it. It's still living in your head rent free.
Welcome to the Aligned and Magnetic Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Ashley, intuitive business coach certified by the International Coaching Federation, and they call me the money mindset and manifestation queen. I take a spiritual and practical approach that's backed by neuroscience to help you make your vision a reality, but more importantly, doing it in a way that lights you the fuck up. If you're ready to create an aligned, magnetic, and profitable business so you can live a life and do the work you are absolutely in love with, you're in the right place. Get ready to hear the powerful questions and raw lessons that you need to create success your way. Thank you so much for being here. Let's dive in. We have a guest today, Christine Forde. Christine is a psychic healer and relationship guide for female entrepreneurs, leaders, and professionals with spiritual awareness who are yearning for a healthy, fulfilling romantic relationship. And what I love about what you wrote in your bio is that people already have that spiritual awareness because it connects to exactly what we were just talking about, right? Like I think more of the people who are really in tune with their heart and in tune with their soul need that extra layer of support that I don't know what you would call it, but like that traditional approaches just don't really address, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so funny because Christine and I actually connected in a networking event. And we were both like, oh, we want to do like more podcast guesting or whatever. So I reached out and I was like, let's, do a pod swap. And we hopped on a call because I always like to come up with some topics prior to getting on an interview and make sure that there's actually a connection there. And we found that we actually have a lot of similarities. So we grew up like 45 minutes apart. In different cities, and we went to the same university. And I can't remember if there were other things, but I think like some of the things that we were experiencing when we connected were also really similar as well. So I say that because I think it's so beautiful when you start to detach from like the how am I going to get my next client or how am I going to do this, and this, and really just step into the this might sound so weird, but the word that's coming up is like intergalactic web. Like when you step out of the fixated mindset of like, how am I going to make this much money and really just focus on business in a much broader picture and just connecting with the people around you and really leaning into the things that you feel called to lean into. For me, that's always where the magic lies. So I want to share that just because, if anyone's listening and they resonate with that, then you can take what you will from that. Yeah. Is there anything you want to add before I jump in with questions? Because I have questions.
Awesome. I feel like, yeah, it's multidimensional too, because we're connecting on different levels and
Hmm.
layers, and nothing is the way that it appears. I was thinking about this morning, about this idea of like, oh, everyone, this is just my monkey brain, okay? So I recognize it's not the truth, but my thought was everyone has made it successfully. They all have the material world sorted, and I'm not there, and I'm slow, and I'm behind, and all these weird thoughts. And I was like, well, what was I doing when they were working through their material world mastery, if you will, like how to function well? And I was doing all my spiritual stuff.
Hmm.
Like I didn't even speak for a while when I was little. And when I tune into that and I ask my soul why that was, why did I have a hard time learning to speak? Why was it so hard for me to figure out physical things? It's like because 75% of you was in the spiritual realm working on your spiritual evolution and working on your gifts, like connecting to
Hmm.
your gifts and working with them. Most people aren't doing that. Their whole attention is on the physical world.
Yeah.
So like it's like your energy was split at that time, which is why it seemed like it was slow, but you were actually accelerating in an area that isn't recognized
Hmm.
by the average person.
Yeah,
So it just
absolutely.
brought a level of compassion back to myself. It's like, no, you're not behind. You're exactly where you're supposed to be because your soul knew that it was going to come in with the gifts, have to develop them. and end up looking like you're behind everyone else when you're not.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's such a, I love that you bring that up because I think that's something that everyone goes through, like whether you've made it or, I mean, I think we've all made it on some degree. Like if you're working toward getting yourself out there and like it just, that comparing yourself, when you really see it objectively, like why are we comparing ourselves to a standard of success? Like, yeah, that might be what we want, but what does it even mean that we're behind? Do you know what I mean? So I love that you shared that because there are different things that different people are working on. And some people are working on the very physical things, and other people are working on their spiritual gifts. And I think we get the opportunity to work on all of it throughout our lifetime, but everyone's journey looks so different. So yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. Okay, so when we were chatting on our connection call, you had such an interesting backstory, and I would love to know how you made it here to psychic healer and relationship guide. I know that's a big question.
There were a lot of bumps in the road. When I was little, I saw spirits. That was very normal for me. My family also did. And so it wasn't that weird, but it was weird enough that everyone in my family who did see spirits or had spiritual experiences would just pretend like it didn't happen. They told me what had happened and they'd say what happened. And then, weeks later, months later, or a year later, I'd bring it up and they'd say, oh, that wasn't really almost like gaslighting me in a way. And I just thought it was strange because I'm like, but why wouldn't you want to recognize that? Why wouldn't you want to be present with that? Why wouldn't you want to develop that? But that was me imposing what I think somebody should do on other people. And it's like, started to realize, well, but hang on a second, that's not everybody's path. So for some reason, I'm interested in this. For some reason, I'm developing this. For some reason, I actually want to be very proficient at this. So as I got older and, I had various life experiences, I got to a really low place around 2015 and ended up in England after, having some prophetic dreams. I had my first Akashic Records reading, and I'd been given this awareness of like that I was in fact a healer, and I couldn't understand that or what that meant because I didn't feel at all like I was good enough to do that. I'm not in a good state. So why is that happening? Like, why, like I need to be I need to be fully healed in order to heal. And it's like, that's also not true. Of course, you can continue to work on yourself. And I recommend that if somebody's a healer or, an intuitive, that you do, just so that you can kind of stay on top of your own stuff and not project it onto other people. It's just sort of self-responsibility and energetic hygiene. And so, yeah, when I went through all of these different experiences, it's, continuously getting the message of you already know what to do. Why are you asking for help here? Why do you need more? Why do you need somebody to tell you that this? And every time somebody would tell me something, it would ring in me. Well, I already knew that. Why, this is a repeat of what I already knew. But my human self that felt very insecure and very unaware and very like, well, I'm not good enough to do this, whatever, needed the validation. And so that was like a huge trap for me for a long time. And now I'm able to do that for myself, thankfully, after all. And I still fall down once in a while when, we all go back to sleep, metaphorically. And so, yeah, it just feels like this whole journey has taken me back to myself in a way. And the work that I've been able to do with myself and then work with others, because most of the time I'll get a download or I get an idea or a thought like, oh, I'm going to try this healing modality that just dropped in. And I try it on myself for a period of time just to experiment with it and see what it does. Then I try it on a close friend. And then I bring it to my clients slowly but surely. And so this is my developmental process when I bring in new modalities. And they're not most of those modalities don't come from external sources. They all come from like my higher self essentially. And then sometimes I'll find things in the external world that overlap that. And it makes me laugh because it's like, oh, I already know that, but that's just the physical world modality that exists. And that's fascinating to me. Like human design, for example, I have a friend of mine who's a human design reader, and we'll read for the same person. I'll read their energy, and she'll read their human design charts with all the birth charts and all of the planetary alignments and all of that stuff. And we'll get almost the same information.
That's amazing.
So it's like, okay, but I do it my way and she does it her way. But, there's a part of me that wants to like, oh, well, like I want the valid way that the world perceives as valid. And it's like, but why do I need that? That's kind of like when people accumulate certifications and degrees and stuff like that. But it's like, but you already know how to do the thing and you have the experience and you've seen results from it, from yourself and from others. And why isn't that enough for you?
That's literally what I was just thinking of as you were saying that, is that we, I feel like, tend to have this tendency to run away from what we know to believe to be true for whatever reason. I think from childhood, we kind of get taught that you can't really trust yourself and all of that. So I imagine for you, there was like a lot of rebuilding of that self trust and that relationship with your intuition to be able to actually like confidently take a leap on it and step forward with the information that you already knew to be true.
Mm,
Yeah.
it's true. And another big thing for me was this notion of fitting in.
Hmm.
And so, but what it really was seeking connection. And
Hmm.
so that's when I knew like that relationships were a big thing in my life. And so it was something that I would always be brought back to through anything I did. If I was doing something like, say, I was, for a few years, I did teach on money, energetics, and like business and stuff like that. And that was pretty easy because I felt very detached from it. But then it was funny because like my higher self would always bring me back to, well, yeah, you can clear that money block, but it's just going to come back because you ain't getting to the root cause. And guess what the root
Mm,
cause is? Well, in this person's case, random person A, right? Random person A, the root cause is a falling out between her and her father, and that never got resolved. Like that was between her and her inner child, maybe 6 years old, and the father figure, and that was the actual root cause of this person's financial issue, for example,
wow.
right? Or person B, it's not being able to trust that money could come in because again, and again, for that person might have been a parent not being consistent with them. So and then in other cases it went deeper and it was like, okay, so it was something from in the womb, or it was something from
Mhm.
a past life. And it's so like these past lives sometimes come in to be cleared because especially for older souls, that tends to be like a big theme for really old souls, is if you have a lot of things that are coming up that don't make any sense to your childhood whatsoever. And you have to be honest with yourself because some people will say, oh, I have no trauma. And it's like, but like your mom dropping you off at daycare could be interpreted as trauma by your child's subconscious, your
Yeah,
child's subconscious. So
absolutely.
to say I don't have any trauma, like, is kind of crazy to me because it's like most people have some form of, well, my need wasn't met in that exact instant, and it registered in my system that it wasn't met. And so I feel a certain way about it. And that never went away because it never got addressed
Mhm.
or resolved. And so that's where resolution work comes in, where I'll do like timeline work, for example. And then there's ancestral trauma too. Like it's very similar to the past life thing, actually, but
Mhm.
that goes down your ancestral lines.
Mhm.
So these things all come to play. And my thing is not a specific modality. My thing is, what does the soul want me to do? What is it asking of me? And how does it want me to carry it out? How does it want me to deliver the message? How is it going to best benefit the person's mind, body, energy, emotions, etc.? And how will they be able to integrate it in the most effective, efficient way? And
Mhm.
everyone's different with
Yeah.
that.
I love that. And just to go back for a second, so you're a manifester in human design, right?
Mhm.
And I think what's so cool about just hearing your journey and how you work with new modalities and stuff, like you are actually designed to pull like ideas, concepts, tools out of thin air. A lot of entrepreneurs who are generators, even like projectors, manifesting generators, can get frustrated because they're like, well, I'm trying to come up with this new idea and it's not working. And I think we can all tap into our higher selves and stuff like that and receive ideas and receive direction. But I just think it's so cool to hear how you are embodying your authentic energy with like within your practice and within, how you choose to help and support people. It's really amazing.
Thank you. Human design was such a newer concept. I think I only became aware of it in like 2018. So
Mhm.
I've been dipping in and out of it because
Yeah.
I have a thing about external modalities. I'm like, I don't want to trust them too much, but I
Yeah.
also, because I don't want to get codependent on them,
Yeah.
because that is a tendency that I have. And so it's like I just have to be very mindful to like create a little bit of distance and not get overly pedestalized with it.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
for me, I love it because it actually supports what I already connect with. And that's actually how I do it is I look at the modality and I say, okay, well, it's telling me this. And then let me have a conversation with my higher self, with my soul, with my subconscious. What's going on? Does this make sense? What's resonant? What isn't resonant? And so honestly, though, a lot of it is very resonant. It's just
Mhm.
that I have to go through the self-discovery process. So I'm a 3/5 emotional manifester. So that 3 is like that experimental thing. And
Mhm.
so it makes sense that I'm like that,
Mhm.
where I don't really trust a thing at face value. It's like, no, I just need to see how it works.
Yeah.
And like, give me 1,000 ways to not build a light bulb, and I'll try all of them
Until I come to the way.
until I find the way.
I think it's so interesting though, right? Because that's such a big part. We were talking at the beginning about how you've been experimenting with different things and you've seen that through different phases of your business. And those are elements in that are so unique to each leader of each business that I think is not really addressed or looked at. And I think once we accept who we are as individuals and lead with that acceptance, and see that stuff as strengths instead of weaknesses, then I think we can not just build something that's more successful, but also just be at peace with our progress and our journey. And I think that that's a really big thing for me. Because if you just spend your life fighting yourself and fighting back against what you're doing, then I mean, you can't really find happiness, right?
Yeah.
So,
It's like saying like the happiness is just over there. I just
mhm.
have to get over there. But you never
Yes.
get over there.
No,
You're always
yeah,
here. You're always
yeah,
exactly where you are. Like
yeah.
I've done the run away to a different country and hopefully my problems will disappear. But guess what? I brought myself with me. So
Yeah.
voila, my problems came with.
Yep,
Same with
I learned that.
relationships,
Yeah,
same thing. It's like, oh, well, if I
totally.
dump this person, then
And
I
get
won't
a new
be triggered
partner.
about this thing anymore. And you get into the next relationship, oh, shoot, this person's also triggering me in this same issue, maybe just in a different way. What's going on?
Mhm. Exactly. So, yeah, I love that you bring up the relationship piece. Can you tell us more about what you do as a psychic healer and relationship guide? Like, how do you work with clients? Who do you work with? How do you help them?
I'm really, like I said, I'm in an experimental, I've just come out of an experimental phase. So one of the things that I notice is that I just get a lot of I go through with certain life experiences. So for a lot of times I have a life experience of needing to learn, enforce, and master my boundaries. So that might be like articulating the boundaries that and then there's an energetically embodying the boundaries. Then there's, okay, well, where are the cracks in my boundaries, like the exceptions? Where am I making exceptions that are not actually aligned, but they're something that my ego thinks I need to keep so that I can be liked or I can fit in or I can have a certain thing that I think I need, which is very shady behavior, really. On if you look at it from that perspective, it's like, okay, but that's the part I need to have compassion with and work through and say, okay, I acknowledge that this is shady. I'm not going to do this anymore because this isn't right. It doesn't feel good to my soul. And I don't get great results from it. Like I want long lasting, healthy relationships, not this mess. Right. So for me, it's like having to go through a process, say something like that. and then embodying it, and then coming into a place where, okay, now I don't even necessarily need to articulate a boundary. I can actually be energetically owning the boundary. So my energy is the boundary. And so now that I'm at that point, for example, that's where I'm going to go and focus on helping people with boundaries and standards and things like that, like energetic standards and then healthy boundaries and what that actually means. And I've already done some of that with past clients and things like that. Another thing was getting into the heart, like really being in your heart with another person. Like that's extremely vulnerable and extremely uncomfortable for people who have a lot of barriers in their heart or a lot of hurt in their heart. So they'll say, "Oh, I really want to have a relationship with this person," but your subconscious is saying, "Hell no, I do not want that." And so part of my gift is to be able to see through people's words. So it's like your words are saying this, but your energy is saying that. And because there's such a disconnect, like there's complete opposition between the two, you're misaligned and you're being inauthentic. Not that you're trying to be, it's not like you're trying to do it, it's not conscious, but it's like almost like I'm trying to override what I really feel. And it's like you can't override what you really feel. You have to face what you really feel. You have to own what you really feel or think. And even if those things aren't true to who the core of who you are, they're true to some part of you. They feel true to some part of you. Maybe the part of you that was conditioned, maybe the part of you that was hurt. And so you actually have to deal with that. It doesn't just go away because you throw some affirmations at it. And affirmations are great. I'm pro affirmation, but clean up your stuff before you put the affirmations in. You don't want to paint gold on poop. Like it's still poop.
I love that. I call
So
affirmations band-aid fixes, like when they're not coupled with that deeper introspection, because yeah, you bring up such a big part of, I mean, like life and manifestation and getting what you want, because I also hear a lot of people saying this, but then when you watch their behaviors and how they even present themselves to the world, it says something completely different. And you can't, like, it doesn't work that way. There's so much inner work and so many layers to align both the subconscious and the conscious, the energy, the mindset, even the actions, right? And looking at what actions are going to align with what I'm saying I want, or what I'm saying I need, or whatever, what I'm saying that I'm not going to do anymore. So yeah, it's big work, big
it's big
work.
work, but it doesn't have to take over your whole life.
No,
So
yeah.
I'm a proponent of don't put your life on hold and then go do healing for 5 years or 2 years or whatever. Don't do that. You're still going to have to live a life. We're here to live lives. Every relationship interaction you have, every, issue or problem that you come up against is part of you becoming aware of something that is maybe conditioning, wounding, not you, not self, if you will, and then making an adjustment. Okay, I recognize this. And what do I need to do to release this? What do I need to do to accept this? What do I need to do to, maybe I just need to cry. Maybe I need to give myself an hour to cry about this particular thing that happened when I was 5. Did I ever really cry or grieve it? No. Okay, well, guess what? That grief is still stuck inside of you. And so you're going to have to give yourself some time to do it. You can build that into your day. You don't have to spend a week on this. You could tell yourself, okay, me and inner child, we're going to have a meeting on Friday at 6 o'clock, and we're going to cry for a half an hour about this particular thing because I'm still feeling a lot of feelings about it. And I just need to emote. And so if I give myself time, if I schedule time with myself throughout my life, throughout my week, it's practical. You can break it down. It doesn't take over your whole life. In fact, the more you avoid it, the more it does take over your whole life because it keeps coming back. It keeps circling your head like a hornet or something. And it's like, hey, guess what? I'm still here. Hey, guess what? I'm still here. And it takes up way more of your energy that way to do it than to just make a decision that you're going to deal with this. You're going to work with it with whatever's coming up right now. And then I'm going to schedule time for myself to do it. Every morning I wake up and I do Reiki, I do a meditation, I do visualization, I do those things. And then I go and make a plan for what I'm going to do for my day to strategize. Okay, well, I'd love to do this. Am I in alignment with it? Yes, I am. Okay, let me move forward on that thing. What about this? Well, I'm not totally in alignment with it. I have a belief about it. Okay, so I know I need to work on that, or I need to just let it go. Whatever I can do. If I can't just let it go, then I have to be real with myself about that, because there's a reason I can't let it go. There's a reason I'm holding on to it. Some part of me doesn't feel safe until I accept something or work through something. So it's being real with yourself. And I think that's the most challenging part, is that it's not a linear process. It's not a one size fits all. Every person has a different process at any given time. It's going to change. And so
Mhm.
don't try to make it all the same way all the time. Give yourself flexibility to move through things with more ease and grace and understanding and empathy, because it's like having empathy for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think one of the biggest obstacles that I've seen, I don't know, you can tell me if this is something you've seen as well, but one of the biggest obstacles is that people don't, so maybe they'll schedule the time in to sit with themselves, but then they'll create every excuse to not, or if they're not creating it, other things just conveniently pop up into their
Yeah.
lives and, oh, I can't do that thing that I scheduled. What are your thoughts on that? Because I know a lot of people in my circle struggle with that.
That is pure resistance and self-sabotage, because on the one hand, it's like, maybe I don't fully understand the value of doing this. I think it's just going to be another task for me to do, and it's going to be ridiculous and a waste of my time. A lot of times, that excuse underneath it is, I am scared beyond belief. I do not want to face this. I do not want to look at this. I am not ready. And if I were in that person's position, what I would do is I would face that fear and I'd say, okay, I understand you. You're here. You're scared. And are you willing to just acknowledge that with me? I'm going to just be with that fact that I'm scared of it. I don't really want to do it because I'm scared of what's going to come up. I'm scared of what I'm going to have to change. Maybe I'm going to have to get out of this relationship, because I already feel like I'm going to have to get out of this relationship, and I don't want to face that because it's going to turn my life upside down and I'm not going to know what to do. And this person's going to be mad at me, and that person's going to be disappointed in me. And then these people aren't going to like me anymore. And we have all these things that just randomly come up. And that's the real reason why you don't want to do it. And so that's very rational for the mind to do. And so it's facing that. Okay, like, I get it. You don't want to face this. You're scared of this. You're afraid of that. You could write down all your fears. You could say, I'm afraid of these things. And if they happened, would it be the end of my life? Would it be the end of everything? Would I die? Like, sometimes I'll go to the extreme. It's like, would it cause me to die? Well, no, but it would be uncomfortable. But would I find a way to deal with it and work through it? Well, yeah. And so you kind of have to have this little back and forth between you and yourself to just basically get yourself to the point where, okay, I'm gonna do it. Like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna have that conversation that I'm afraid of. And maybe sometimes they don't even happen. Sometimes these fears are like catastrophizing, and it's the worst case scenario because it's your mind trying to protect you. And so that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. I'll give you an example. This isn't a relationship thing, but it was something I really wanted. I was going for my driver's test, my final highway test or whatever. And I really got real with the fact that I might fail. I was doing a lot of different things. I was doing hypnosis. I was practicing to get more confident. I was asking people to point out what I was doing wrong so that I could improve it. I was doing all the things, right, to prepare. And then I was like, but if I failed, what would it mean? Well, maybe I would have to restart and do all the tests all over again. But do I still want the thing that I want that badly that I would be willing to do that if it happened? Hell yeah, without a doubt. I am getting this thing. whether I get it tomorrow or whether I get it 6 months from now or 2 years from now. I don't care when it happens. It's going to happen because I really want it. It's important to me. And so if you can have that attitude, like, yeah, if the worst thing happens, will I still be okay? Will I still be able to dust myself off and try again? If I can do that, then it creates more confidence and it creates less attachment to something happening or not happening. And it lessens the fear too. And it just puts you back into your body too. And that's really important because you're just in your mind when you're in that state, when you're in the self-sabotage. And that's the other thing you mentioned about, well, just stuff just randomly happens and then prevents me. I've done that too. I broke both of my feet
Oh
to
my God.
sabotage myself in a span of
Jesus.
5 years. But
That's wild.
it's crazy. It's like, are you kidding me? And the way that it happened was so ridiculous too. And so it really forced me to confront, like, what am I running away from? What are my
Mm-hmm.
feet trying to take me somewhere where my soul is saying, nope, we ain't going there. Sorry, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to sit your butt down. You're going to focus on your healing. You're going to face the things you're afraid of in this home with
Mm-hmm.
these people. And that's going to be what it is going to be. And you don't have a choice in this matter because I made an agreement with my soul that I wasn't going to run away anymore. And so when
Mm-hmm.
my subconscious tried to make that happen, there was an intervention. Now, did it have to be that extreme? No. But like if I'd been a little bit more, maybe I don't know, but I think if I'd been a little bit more like honest with myself, like I'm scared of this and I don't want to face this, but I'm going to anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm going to be supported by my guides, by my higher self, by other people who care about me. I can bring support in. I'm worthy of that. Like
Yeah.
that took practice to get me to the point of being able to accept that, allow that. And I'm still working through some of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's part of the process. And so if it's like, okay, I want to do this thing, but I'm not letting myself do the thing, just get honest with yourself. So you really don't want to do it. You're not in the right place for it. But at some point or another, you're going to have to do it. Like you're going to have to. It's either going to be the easy way or the hard way, I say.
Well, and I find it's funny that you mentioned breaking both your feet because I find that the more we ignore what our internal voice is telling us, the like you get to a point where something physical does intervene. I had that happen a couple weeks ago where I kept saying for the entire month of August, like, I just need a break. I just need a break. I just need a break. But my ego is so focused on what's next, what's next, what's next. I got to launch my next thing. I got to launch my next thing. And so I didn't let myself, like, I was working as I could because I always reach this point in the summer where my energy just drops and I can't accomplish as much. But yeah, I got to this point where I don't even know how it happened. I couldn't tell you because there was no moment that was like, this is what happened. But yeah, I totally sprained my ankle and I literally couldn't walk. I was hopping around and crawling around for a solid couple of days. But I, that happened and I was like, okay, it's a clear message. Like, I need to chill out and stop. And if I need to take a break, I need to take a break. If I need to put this launch on hold, I need to put the launch on hold. But what happens, I think, that we're both talking about is that we really try to force our way and force our desires, our mental desires, like our desires that maybe we don't trust or believe that everything's going to unfold in divine timing and that everything is going to be okay and that you can take a break and you can take time to heal in your day-to-day life and you can take time to look at the thoughts that are scary for you. And if you don't, then it's not going to be a complete surprise when something physical happens.
That's why I don't always like, and this might be a contentious topic, but I don't believe in accidents.
Yeah, me
I
too.
don't believe anybody just randomly gets in an accident. I don't believe in randomness personally, because when I look at the energy, because if I stand back and I'm like, okay, well, let me just look at the energy. What am I seeing? I'm clairvoyant, I'm clairaudient, clair alien, clairsentient. I have it all. And I can see it all really clearly, especially it's so easy in other people.
Yeah,
But
I hear that.
because we have our own blind spots, which is why I
Mhm.
work with somebody. But when I look at the energy, I'm like, well, that energy actually started back, 10 years ago. That's
Mm-hmm.
when that energy initiated. And so now you're at this sort of peak point where, okay, like the soul's saying, we're done with this cycle. Let's complete it now. It's time. Of course, you have free will, and your human can say, hey, I'm going to override that. We're going to keep that cycle going on another 3 years because I ain't ready to face it. Fine. But then there's a point at which the soul says, okay, no, that's enough. Like you're literally going to sabotage all these other things that are very important for you to do in your life. And so
Yeah.
that's why I say get really on board with your soul. When your soul
Mm-hmm.
says it wants something or it wants to accomplish something or do something or go for something, it's really important that you allow that to move through you. And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, things do happen in divine timing. And all the things you're afraid of, it's never going to happen. I'm never going to be successful. I'm going to be broke forever. I'm going to be single forever. I'm going to be alone forever. Whatever your fear is probably unfounded.
Mm-hmm.
And I always see them as these sort of little energies that kind of infiltrate that wound. And it's like, let those go because they're actually not helping you. And they're almost always stuck in the mental body. They're never in
Yes.
the soul aspect of your body. So your soul's not going to take you off track. It might not do what your mind expects it to do,
Mm-hmm.
but it's going to get you to a place that feels really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I always say that our soul has it's like our GPS, right? So when people talk about, oh, I want to achieve all these goals, but they don't actually have a clear idea of where they're headed, it's really difficult to allow our soul to take us there because we just try to mentally create like some sort of pathway. But I found in my work and in my life that I can make all of the mental gymnastics happen to reach a goal, but it's never going to unfold the way that I think. So, surrender and letting go of control, letting go of the outcome has been a huge topic for me on my path. And I imagine that's probably something you work with a lot of your clients on too.
Surrender is so important because it's you saying, okay, soul, okay, universe, okay, God, okay, higher self, I trust you.
Hmm.
Just take it out of my hands. I've done everything I can physically to facilitate and co-create this experience or this particular desire or this manifestation.
Hmm.
And it's now in your hands.
Yeah,
And you literally have to let it go. You literally, like, I sometimes will write down the desire. It's like, it is done, and then burn it or
I
rip it
love
up
that.
into a bunch of pieces because it's like, I really need it to go out of my energy.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I've given up on it. It
Hmm.
just means that I've decided that there's nothing more I'm going to do on this.
Hmm.
And my intention is very powerful. I believe that our intentions are very powerful and manifest instantaneously, but not always in the physical
Hmm.
instantaneously.
Yeah.
So energetically, they're manifested. Universe works with all the other energies that are on the planet to co-create and facilitate the experience. And then it's up to us to face our fears and have courage to actually take the steps that we need to take, do the scary thing, make the call, have the confrontational conversation with this person or whatever. Well, they won't like me after. Well, they might not. Can you be okay with that? Can you like yourself enough that it's okay to have that conversation anyway? Can you be
Hmm.
courageous and brave and bold enough to do it anyway?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think the
Surrender.
biggest thing though that's yeah, coming up for me is just that mental mind game that we play with ourselves and just like our intentions manifest instantaneously. And I was actually going to add on to what you were saying about, burning what it is that you want. And you're right, it's not about throwing that vision or that intention away, but rather just handing it over, right? Like passing it off, choosing that you're not going to obsess over how, when, if it happens, or try to figure out how it's going to happen. But you're saying, like, this is what I want. It's already happened. And show me the way, God. Show me the way, universe, spirit, higher self, whatever it is, and bring it to me. So, yeah, I love that you mentioned that. One question that I always ask my podcast guests is, what does alignment mean to you?
Alignment means clarity and connection and embodiment of the mind, the body, the emotions, and the soul. And if one of them is off, there's misalignment. It's kind of like if you imagine your physical body and your cells, they all work together to, repair your liver or to digest your food. If a bunch of them said, hey, you know what, I'm just not going to do that today. And then you had a bunch that were like, I'll do it, but I got to do overtime. Well, you're probably going to have some sort of issue or digestive problem, for example, right? So when everything is moving in towards the same direction with the same intention, that's alignment. That's
Mm-hmm.
to me a true alignment,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just you're all on the same page. You're all moving in the same direction. You're all working together. You're all like, okay, this is my job, I'm going to do it. This is my job, I'm going to do it. Everyone has their jobs, and everyone doing their jobs gets the whole human body or the whole human vessel towards where it wants to go.
Mm-hmm. I love that explanation. That's a really good image to put into perspective and just think about because, yeah, every piece of us does have a function or like a purpose, right? Like a job to do. And if it's stuck doing other jobs, or it's like you said the word earlier, if it's not, what was the word that you used? When they're disconnected or they're not dissociated.
They're not on the same page. They're like
Pretty
going in
much.
separate directions. Like, so one is I'm going to go process this fear because the rest of the human part of me is not willing to process this fear. So then you have
Yeah.
a bunch of cells in your body that are trying to tackle this fear on its own.
Yeah.
And then so it ends up creating what I would call split energy
Yes, exactly.
conflict.
Yeah.
So you have like, okay, well, here's the digestive cells, but here's the cells that their job is not supposed to be processing this trauma. That's another parts of you job, but that part of you is being blocked by your ego or by a story or by a fear. And so you're not willing to do it. So now these cells or this part of you has to take over. And then it creates the blockage, the split energy, the issue.
I love that explanation. In terms of relationships, what do you what would you say to someone who wants to have more fulfilling relationships, but they're struggling with repeating the same patterns over and over again?
Yeah, it's similar to what I was saying before. It's really about getting real
Hmm.
with when you go into that next relationship. Are you doing it from a pure intentional place? And what is your intention? Why are you in that relationship? And if any of it is because I'm afraid of, because I don't want to deal with, because I'm scared of, like, I don't want to be alone. So I'm just going to go be with this person, even though I haven't resolved whatever it was that I need to resolve. There's something I'm avoiding about myself. So that's where I often see patterns of like relationships, like somebody like I guess a serial relationship person where they're just like in a relation one after another, after another, after another. And what I see under like from the root cause of that is avoidance of self. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what's under the avoidance of self? I'm scared to deal with whatever it is. I'm scared to deal with this thing that happened with my first boyfriend or my first friend. Even doesn't even have to be a romantic partner. It could be a friendship that fell apart when you were a kid or you were a
Hmm.
teenager. And so since then it's like you've always had this sort of barrier between you and other people. And so you end up manifesting similar types of behaviors as maybe the friend that created the breakdown. And the reason that that happens is because some part of you is trying to resolve it. It's the same
Hmm.
with why a lot of people will manifest issues that they had with their father, for example, especially women. They'll manifest similar issues that they had with their father in their current relationships. They might not look the same, it might not happen exactly the same way, but the energy signature is the same. And so, what it is that you haven't resolved this thing with your father. You haven't gone through whatever you need to do to resolve it. That doesn't mean you have to go and forgive him if he was being abusive to you, or that you should have contact with him if you got no contact for very practical safety reasons. But it just means that there's an energy between you two that has not been resolved. And if you have anger, if you have resentment, if you have judgment, if you have hurt and pain and anything like that, that's not necessarily affecting him. That's affecting you. It's like you're
Mhm.
carrying around a truckload of stuff. And you're like, I need to hold on to this because I need to justify my feelings about this person and what they did. And again, it's not about excusing any bad behaviors. This is a very internal process.
Mhm.
It's very much an energetic process. And so if you can confront these things that happened and start slow. You don't need to overwhelm yourself and try and do it all in one shot. Like, hey, maybe I'm going to work on looking at my resentment today. And I can recognize that that's not helping me to move forward in a way that I want to move forward in. And I feel justified in being resentful because of what happened.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I recognize it's still not helping me. So it's kind of finding ways that work for you to work through these things. And I
Mhm.
know that sounds really vague because there's so many different ways you could, for practical reasons, you could start with EFT tapping, like
Mhm.
emotional freedom technique. That's a really great one. I had a teacher for 2 years work with me on certain stuff. It was great. And so it was like became a modality that I turned to because it was very helpful to me. Might not resonate for everybody. Maybe journaling's more your thing. Maybe you need to physically move the energy out through exercise or some sort of
Mhm.
a movement. Maybe you need to ground more. Maybe you need to just sit your butt on the earth or walk on the sand on the beach. Whatever it is that helps you to move those old, dense energies, that's going to start to help.
Mhm.
And that's the first step, right?
Yeah.
It's about being honest about what happened. It's being honest about how you really feel about it and going to the part of you that feels like, well, I want them to suffer. So I'm going to continue to be mad at them, but they're not suffering while you be mad at them. You're suffering while you be mad
Mhm.
at them.
Mhm.
And so it's recognizing that that's not going to get you into where you want to go. And so if you're manifesting the same relationship over and over again, I would say pause and look at why you're what you're avoiding, what you're afraid of, and why you can't let it go.
Mhm.
What's your story about why you can't let it go? I can't let it go because, and really inquire about it. Ask it questions because it's almost like you're asking a part of you questions that has information that you need. And this is why I love doing the work that I do because I can look at that, pull that information out, and then we can clear it very quickly. Of course, if that person chooses to bring that story back, that's more work that they're going to end up having to do. But
Mhm.
we can clear these things very quickly and bring you to a clean slate, but that's on you to decide.
Mhm.
Are you really get real with yourself? Are you really ready to let it go? Or
Yeah.
some part of you still getting something out of it? Is your ego still getting something out of it? And it's okay if it is. Like, this is not a judgment thing. This is just
Mhm.
being honest.
Yeah, it's almost like a coming to terms with what happened and with a way to move forward in a way that's going to be almost like freeing and feel like freedom for each individual person, whatever that looks like.
Exactly.
Yeah. I have one more question that I want to ask. So I went on a huge healing journey and I feel like I got to a place where I was super open with a lot of people, with strangers, with family, and then some things happened in my life where I felt like I closed off again. And so I've been healing and working through that, but I think a lot of people close their hearts or close off parts of who they are for fear of repeating the same patterns over and over again. And I wonder what your thoughts are on, like, how do you integrate those old experiences? And there's obviously a purpose and a reason behind closing yourself off, but also come to a place where you can maybe have a little bit more discernment, but also be free to be yourself around those that you love. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a big question. And there are installments or like seasons that you go
Mhm.
through, like kind of like,
Yeah.
this idea of like you're experimenting and then you're in getting clear on something. And then you're like, okay, I'm
Mhm.
going to do this and I'm going to focus on it. And then I'm going to refine it. And then it's going to break down. And then I'm going to go through that cycle again. It's the same kind of idea of that in a sense, not
Mhm.
exactly, but it's going through stages almost.
Yeah. Almost like the
Um,
grief process or the grief cycle, right?
exactly. And so I would even equate it to that, but each person is slightly different as to like why they're going through, like why that close-hearted thing comes up again.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's more valuable to look at exactly what the root cause was, where it originally came from, because sometimes it doesn't even make sense. Like I said, it doesn't make sense to this lifetime. Sometimes there's a
Mm-hmm.
soul contract between you and that person where it's like, okay, there's clearly an unresolved energy. And so it keeps playing out in every relationship. And I don't know why. And that's a blind spot. That's a real authentic blind spot for
Mm-hmm.
somebody who may not see it that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that I would do it, because this is like, it's not easy, and I'm not going to tell you that, oh yeah, just do this and it's easy, it's done.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a
Eventually,
complex situation.
yeah, it's a complicated situation because you have to go to the places where you originally felt like you were constantly let down or disappointed. That when
Mm-hmm.
every time you were your true self, you got knocked down a peg. You got, penalized for it. You got in trouble for it, or something bad happened. You lost people because of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other side of it is, well, maybe I lost people, but was it the reason that I thought it was?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe me being
Right.
authentic wasn't actually the reason why this, so the original root cause might be something that had nothing to do with what your brain thought it was or what your inner child told you it was. Oh, here's the story. This is what really happened, and this is why. And then when you go from it from that bird's eye perspective, the soul's perspective, the higher mind's perspective, the soul says, no, I had nothing to do with it. That was just your story. You made that story up so that you could understand why that person was behaving that way with you. Oh, okay. So it wasn't because I was being authentic. No, that person had some sort of an issue. And maybe you being authentic emphasized to them that they were being very disingenuous about something and they got triggered by it. Does that
Mm-hmm.
mean you being authentic was bad? No. It just means that they had a very strong reaction to authenticity because they could feel in themselves that they were not doing it, that they were
Mm-hmm.
ashamed of it, maybe on some level. They felt bad about it. And you showing up authentically just highlighted it for them and made them feel uncomfortable with themselves. And so instead of, I don't know, working on themselves, they decided to project. And so
Totally.
it's not always the case. Sometimes it's not projection. So I wouldn't automatically assume it's that, but I would just say, explore, could it be that?
Mm-hmm.
And was there some sort of projection that I internalized or that I interpreted as like, because kids are very self-focused.
Mm-hmm.
So they think that everything they do and everything that happens around them is because of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives them also a sense of control too. Like, well, if it was because of me, I can fix that because I'm the problem. And that's not always the case. Yeah, sometimes there's things that we do that we wish we hadn't done. And then there's other times where it's like, no, like this person being irrationally angry or miserable all the time really had nothing to do with me. They were being that way for whatever reason. They had their own stuff going on. I have to basically make peace with the fact that that person is miserable, or that
Mm-hmm.
person is angry. I can't control them and I can't make them feel better about themselves or their life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that can be very hard for somebody who wants to love and care about people around them or save them on some level. And that's where you have to face the fact that everyone's got their own things going on, and they also all have connection to the divine, to their higher self.
Mm-hmm.
And they can turn to that at any time.
Yeah.
And it's their choice whether they do so or not. And you have no control over whether they do it. You can suggest it to them. You can say, hey, maybe look at this. And then they could just turn around and not do it. And you have to be detached from all of that. And that can
Mm-hmm.
be very hard, especially if you're a very like compassionate person.
Yeah.
So it's creating a little bit of detachment from that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're working through something like that and you're noticing that these sort of unfulfilling relationships continue to pop up, it's really okay, what's the underlying story here?
Yeah.
What happened originally? And it's always going to be one place, like there's going to be one origin point where it all started. And you might not remember it. And that can be hard if you dissociated when you were a child because your memories literally don't stick, but they stuck in your cells. Your
Mm-hmm.
cells remember. So you could even talk to your body cells. I like to do that
Mm.
sometimes, like a scripting, like body cells, I want you to talk to me about this. Body cells in my liver, I want you to talk to me about this. And ask it questions, and if you have a strong connection to your intuition, you'll be able to feel the difference between what's your conscious mind or what's your higher self and these body cells, for example, right?
Yeah.
It's going to feel very true when they speak. What they
Mm.
say is going to feel true. And it's not going to feel like completely, are you sure?
Yeah.
It's gonna feel true. You're gonna have a connection to what they're saying because you're gonna be like, oh, I know that.
Hmm.
And this is just confirmation.
Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that tool. I've done some similar type of kind of visualization, but I have never done it the way that you shared. So thank you. So very valuable tool. Something that just came up for me as you were talking is really just, I think our minds are so fixated on making meaning, like you mentioned, right? And something that I used, I think it was like one time with a client, and then she loved it so much that I'm like, I need to use that more often with myself and with others. But just really asking yourself, what if the thing that you're making mean something so big actually means nothing? What if it actually means absolutely nothing at all? Because people will get stuck in their heads like, oh, I can't make money because I'm overweight. I can't make money because I don't have any clients yet. I can't make money because of this and that and the other thing. And it's like, well, what if actually none of that is real at all? And I think that that can sometimes be a helpful place to just come back to neutrality and just step into our power again and realize that actually at any moment you can make whatever you want mean whatever you want.
I bought this notebook a while back and it's like conversation. It says on the title of it, it's like just a journal. And it says conversations with the soul.
I love
And
that.
I just thought about, like if you just talk to your soul about what is going on and you could actually tune in and listen to it and know in fact that it is your soul, like that's important. Have a level of discernment,
Hmm.
work on that, okay? But if you're at that point where you can do that, ask your soul, well, objectively, or what is the actual truth of the situation,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so it might say, well, there's a lesson here. There's a gift in
Yeah.
the situation. There's something that's actually in service to you. This person came out of your life because your souls were no longer walking the same path. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It doesn't
Hmm.
mean that, if you feel you did something wrong, address that and actually work through that, take accountability within yourself for that, if that's actually true. But if you do that and you still feel like, but I still must have done something else and I can't fathom what it might have been, ask your soul. Ask your soul. You could even have, sometimes I do this before bed. It's like, if I have a question, I'll say to my higher self, or I'll just talk to myself, I want to have the answer to this particular thing that I'm dealing with through my dream state.
Mm.
Wake up the next day and I might get an obvious answer, like drop into my into my crown chakra and I just hear it right away. And other times it just happens through my life experience and I just see things or I notice things and it's like, oh my God, that's the answer.
Hmm.
Or I'll go on Facebook and I'll see like a thing that pops up and I'm like, okay. Cue Twilight Zone music. But
That's
but
awesome.
yeah, it's there's so many ways that we can communicate with ourselves. You can even do it through
Yeah.
nature. You could talk to the
Yeah.
tree,
Yeah. I love
go.
bringing nature lessons into my life and just leaning on the elements for support. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you are launching a mini mind. Do you want to tell us about it?
Yes. So this mini mind, it's called Date from a Clean Slate, and it's about discovering how to become a magnet to your ideal partner. And it's really about the dating process. It's about getting you into, so if you're somebody who is dating or wants to date, like this is, and it's typically for women. I mean, if you're a dude and you want to come in, that's okay. But just so you know, this is centered towards women. But essentially, what we're going to do is that 7 days, we're going to go through different levels of connecting to what's coming up and what's creating blockages within you that keep facilitating similar experiences. Because it's sort of like, oh, I'm going to show up for this date, and little does this person know I have all this baggage, but I'm going to show up with a smile and beautiful makeup on my face, and I'm just going to look like top tier, and they're not going to know about it until 6 months down the line or 3 months down the line that I'm hiding a lot of this old unresolved stuff. My ex did this. Anytime that, anything where it's like I was a victim to the situation, these people always do this to me. Like those kinds of things are things that we can resolve through energy work, through emotional healing, through mental healing. I'm going to be creating videos for this. And so each day you're going to be able to receive a download basically that I'm going to bring through. We're going to start with what do you want and get clear on that. And think about things that, you know, I don't think it's possible to have a really awesome dating experience. If that's something you want, a really awesome dating experience, or maybe you don't really want to date anymore. You're like, I kind of want to meet somebody, but I don't really want to do the traditional dating approach. I want something else. The reason your heart is saying you want something else is because something else is available. And so, or you're avoiding something. So we'll figure out with
One of the
that.
two.
One of the two. And so I'm going to be doing Q&As throughout the challenge as well to just sort of address people's stuff, because as using my gifts, I can pinpoint specific things and what you would need to do to address it. And then we're going to probably do some energy healing throughout as well.
I
So you'll
love
be able
that.
to attend those. And so, yeah, that's what I'm really excited about delivering this, because I think a lot of people are looking for something like this. I know I kind of wanted something like this, and I thought, this idea of like, I don't have to kind of try and sift and sort through a bunch of like bargain bin, bargain basement type dates. I can actually get myself into an aligned relationship without having to put myself through really crummy experiences. And that doesn't mean things aren't going to test your courage or things aren't going to test your ego. It just means that you're going to be on a higher path towards a more
Mhm.
conscious relationship. And so typically spiritual and conscious women are going to be drawn to my work in general, but especially to this program. If you're just kind of like, yeah, I've done this sort of like conventional matrix style dating, and I'm miserable, I'm not happy with it, it's not giving me what I want. I want something that's going to light my soul up.
Mhm.
You might end up with somebody or find somebody who you completely couldn't even imagine you would be with, but because your hearts are so aligned and you feel so loved in that relationship, you're like, whoa, I never would have imagined that my soul could take me to this, because my mind sure as heck wasn't. And my mind was
Mhm.
the one that was basically trying to create all the dates and set up all the dates and choose the right person. It's like, but my mind is pulled in a dozen different directions. It's got trauma, it's got conditioning, it's got, fanciful ideas that are mostly disguised for avoidance. So let me get onto track where my soul actually wants to go, so that I can have that conscious relationship where I feel the way I want to feel in the relationship itself, and feel the way I want to feel while I'm dating. Maybe I want a
Mhm.
more exciting experience, a more fun experience. I don't want to be ghosted. Okay, let's find out why you're getting ghosted all the time. Let's sort out the real cause of that. What are you
Mhm.
afraid of? And so this is going to be very much tapping into what are the fears coming up and what do we need to do to release them specifically for you as you come into the mini mind.
Amazing. It sounds so good. It's pretty much doing all of the work that we talked about today, like that mental work, the emotional work, the healing work to be able to manifest your ideal partner. So it's incredible. Thank you. Is there anything else that you would like to leave our audience with today, whether it's like a piece of advice or just like anything, last words that you would like to share?
Yeah, it's not easy to do this work. And
Mm,
sometimes it requires confronting things that you're like, can it just stay in the past? I just
mhm,
don't want to think about it anymore. But even in saying that, you're still thinking about it. It's still living in your head rent free. So if
mhm.
you have a bunch of that, like reach out if you're looking for additional support. And if you're like, okay, I kind of want to figure out how to do this, start confronting it, start your own process. You can
Mhm.
work through that. Like, I just basically started with the inquiry. I want to figure out how to work through this thing because I don't want it to be a part of my daily life anymore. Like I'm over this pattern. I'm tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that actually ended up manifesting me all the different tools and things that I do. And that's how I get a lot of my healing modalities. I'll just sit there and I'll think, isn't there a faster way to do this, this, and this? And within usually a day or two, I get a download of like, here, try this, do this technique or do this thing. And it's like, whoa, that was way better. And so those can be really easy. Like answers for me are, because I have a belief that manifesting answers is the easiest thing in the world for me.
I
And
love that.
I truly believe that and I've experienced that. And so if I can manifest an answer instantaneously, I will. And so whatever your answer is, those of you listening, follow that, trust that. Maybe it is working with somebody. Maybe it is buying that book you've been thinking about. Maybe it is doing this course that you were, somebody, your friend recommended to you. Maybe it's working with that person that your friend referred you to. Maybe it's listening to this podcast. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
this podcast gave you the answer you were praying for. And you don't have to actively be praying. Your mind, your heart, your soul, we're all basically saying, I want this, help me to find this, help me to guide me to this, connect me to this. You
Yeah.
just never know what you're going to end up finding. And don't be afraid to take the step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are really great pieces of advice because we can get all of the intuitive downloads and nudges that we ask for. But if we don't actually act on it, if we don't create the space to sit with ourselves or reach out to the people we're thinking of, then it's kind of pointless.
Yeah,
So,
it's sort of like, well, you asked for the answer, but you didn't do what you didn't actually follow through on it. Are you
mhm.
sure you really want it?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so sometimes that opportunity might disappear and it might come back again, but you
Mm.
might have to wait another 6 months. So
Yeah.
you can either say yes right now, or you can say yes 6 months or a year or 2 years or 5 years or however long you want to wait. You can wait as long as you like,
Hmm.
but you're going to keep moving through a similar pattern until you say yes, and it's okay. I feel like I've had to learn compassion for myself for something taking longer than I think it should, because I had a lot of unresolved fear and I wasn't ready to face it.
Yeah.
It's never impossible for you to move forward.
Hmm.
You can move forward at any time, but you can move forward now or you can move forward later, and that's okay too. Either one is good, but if you're ready to move forward now, take your steps.
Yeah, I love that. That's really great advice. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your journey with us and just for sharing all of the good nuggets that you did. I really appreciate it. And I will link all of your Instagram and your details below so that our people can find you.
Thank you so much for having me. I so
My
appreciate it. It was a great
pleasure.
interview.
Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast today. If you like what you heard, I would love it if you left a review. If you like my vibe, come and hang with me in my Facebook or Telegram group. I'll drop the link to my email list below where you can get instant access. Make sure you check the show notes for any other links that I mentioned today. And until next time, I'm sending you waves of abundance.